The other thing you get to do at a convention is roll out your vice presidential candidate, which in this case was JD Vance.
Yeah.
I know him a little bit.
What do you think of him?
Look, we're from the same generation. We're both from the Midwest, different parts of the Midwest.
Right.
I know a lot of guys like JD Vance. I've run into a lot of guys like him. Not so much when I was growing up in Indiana.
Thiel. Peter Thiel is his big backer.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, if people don't know who that is, he started PayPal. Yeah. He's gay. He's a billionaire. I mean, I've had a couple of people who knew you were coming on this week said, ask Pete what he thinks about Peter Thiel being so in love with JD Vance, who is flatly against gay marriage.
So I think it's a profound contradiction, but maybe it's not that complicated. I know there are a lot of folks who say, what's going on with some of these Silicon Valley folks veering into Trump world with JD Vance and backing Trump? What are they thinking? Silicon Valley is supposed to be, they're supposed to care about climate. They're supposed to be, pro-science and rational and libertarians. So normally libertarians don't like authoritarians. What's up with that? I think it's actually, we've made it way too complicated. It's super simple. These are very rich men who have decided to back the Republican Party that tends to do good things for very rich men.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And by the way, that's kind of what you're getting with. That's kind of what you're getting with JD, right? So I knew a lot of people like him when I got to Harvard. I found a lot of people like him who would say whatever they needed to get ahead. And 5 years ago, that seemed like being the anti-Trump Republican, so that's what he was. Talked about how he was unfit, how he was cynical, called him an opioid, which is kind of a weird thing to say about a person, but definitely a really... But I mean, for somebody whose identity is that they're connected to Appalachia, which has an opioid crisis, that really is the darkest thing you could possibly say about Donald Trump, at least in public. But behind the scenes, apparently, he's actually calling him Hitler, right? Seriously. 5 years later, the way he gets ahead is that he's the greatest guy since sliced bread. And I actually watched this exact same process with somebody else I got to know in my days in the Midwest, which was my former governor, Mike Pence, who I watched start out as an evangelical Christian who cared about rectitude and family values, and then get on board with a guy who was mixed up with a porn star, make excuses for him, so that he could have power. And then he did. He got 4 glorious years, I guess, as vice president of the United States. And it ended on the west front of the Capitol with Trump supporters proposing that he be hanged for using the one shred of integrity he still had to stand up to an attempt to overthrow the government. Right. So I guess, maybe not as a politician, but as a human being, what I'll say is that I hope things work out a little bit better for JD Vance than they did for Mike Pence.
I guess the lesson here is that if you're a Republican, do whatever you can to avoid becoming the target of Pete Buttigieg's ire. Here he takes aim at Trump's new VP pick, JD Vance, for, first of all, taking a job that, didn't exactly work out too well for the last guy. I feel like we kind of gloss over this point, but the whole reason that Trump even needed another VP pick was because he tried to have the last one assassinated. Find me another job where the last guy in the position had a literal mob sicked on them with a gallows chanting for their hanging. That's generally not a position that any self-respecting person would want to take. Operative word, self-respecting. And of course, JD's lack of self-respect is also evident given the fact that he has now taken the loyalty oath to serve the same guy who he once so vehemently derided. To Buttigieg's exact point, yes, he called Trump cultural heroin. According to a piece JD Vance himself wrote for The Atlantic, quote, "To every complex problem, he promises a simple solution. He never offers details for how these things will work because he can't. Trump's promises are the needle in America's collective vein. Trump is cultural heroin. He makes some feel better for a bit, but he cannot fix what ails them, and one day they'll realize it." In fact, that doesn't even begin to cover it. Here's the full breadth of what JD actually thinks about the guy who he now so breathlessly advocates for.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
It makes you think that at a fundamental level, this is sort of a he said, she said, right? And at the end of the day, do you believe Donald Trump, who always tells the truth? Just kidding. Or do you believe that woman on that tape?
I cannot stand Trump because I think he's a fraud. Well, I think he's a total fraud that is exploiting these people, who is a total fraud.
Like you said, I agree with you on Trump because I don't think that he's the person. I don't think he actually cares about folks.
So as a conservative who thinks that Trump does not have the answers and isn't qualified to be president, what are you going to do this election, if you don't mind saying?
My current plan is to vote either third party or, as I joke to my wife, I might write in my dog, because that's about as good as it seems. But, you know, I think there's a chance, if I feel like Trump has a really good chance of winning, that I might have to hold my nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. Ultimately, I think I'll probably vote third party. I might vote for this new guy who I really like, Evan McMullin, who I actually met the other day. But I think that I'm going to vote third party, because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
So when Pete explains that JD Vance will say anything he needs to get ahead, this is what he's talking about. Back in 2016, Republicans could wield their condescension like Trump like a cudgel to shore up their conservative bona fides, because, after all, far from having conservative values, Trump has no values. And yet the GOP is purportedly the party of values, of law and order, of states' rights, of the troops, of the Constitution, of family. So clearly, these people wouldn't be too keen on supporting a con man, a fraud, a cheater, an adulterer, and a liar. But the fact that they all eventually did come around to Trump is proof then that it was never about any adherence to their purported values. It was always about power. Those principled stands were a glossy veneer to substantiate their supposed moral superiority, but it was a sham. It was window dressing. They never cared about any of it. Not family values, not states' rights, not the Constitution, not law and order, not democracy. Which is why now they've thrown all of it by the wayside as they hitch their wagons to Trump, because they view him as the best vehicle to get what they actually want, which is total power by any means necessary. You've heard the saying, when fascism comes to America, it'll be wrapped in the flag and carrying a cross. Well, this guy has wrapped himself in the flag, and he's holding a cross. And JD Vance is helping usher in that fascism right now. The simple fact is that there's only one party that has any adherence to their values, and it's not the Republicans. It is the Democrats, who say they care about climate, so they funded clean energy manufacturing to the greatest degree in history. They say they care about veterans, so they funded veteran health care with the PACT Act. They say they care about health care, so they finally got the government to negotiate lower drug prices and cap the cost of insulin at $35 and the cost of inhalers at $35 and out-of-pocket costs for seniors at $2,000. They say they care about unions, so they back the PRO Act and breathlessly advocate for unions, whose popularity is now surging as a result. They say they care about infrastructure, so they passed the infrastructure law and are fixing roads and bridges and ports and tunnels and airports across the country, along with ensuring that all Americans get access to broadband internet. They say they care about the economy, and they presided over the strongest economy in the world. They say they care about jobs, and they provided over the addition of more jobs than any other administration in history. On metric after metric, Democrats have proven over the last few years alone that they are actually willing to stand up for the things they claim to support. So as we head toward yet another election this November, remember that while the Democrats may not be perfect, they are looking out for the people that they serve, and they will hold true to their promises. We can't say the same for Republicans. I've got a really exciting announcement. I've written a book. It's called Shameless. This book explores how Republicans have exploited their historical branding while attacking our democracy, how the media has proven itself a willful participant, and how Democrats can learn from this to rebalance the political scales and save our democracy. It has been a lifelong dream of mine to write my own book, and so I'd like to ask you to pre-order it by clicking the link right here on the screen. And if you buy within this pre-order period, your book is going to come with a signed nameplate. As you know, I've never had a single sponsor on my channel. I don't ask for money or anything like that, but if you're looking for a way to support me, this is hands down the best way to do it. So again, follow the link right here on the screen, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for pre-ordering Shameless. And as always, make sure to subscribe to see more of my content.